Gender roles are universally present. There is no human society in which there are no gender roles. But from human society to human society, those gender roles are not universally the same.
In every social species, no, in the vast majority of social species that have been looked at, the major cause of aggression in that society or species is male-male violence over reproductive access to females. That is close to a universal, that is the most common form motivator of violence on this planet, humans and otherwise.
And men, of course, are murdered much more than women. And who murders them? Other men.
The climactic scene of most Disney films is a battle between two men. The violent battle to win the love of a woman or maintain pride and status is the most important scene in establishing which of these characters is the better man.
Ultimately, conflict is something social. It's about differences in opinion, it's about differential access to power, differential access to resources, and conflict is something that's absolutely social. It occurs between two individuals or between groups of individuals.
When you got a bunch of males who are getting along well with each other and they're beginning to look at the neighbors, because lots of males cooperating together can make for some very bad neighbors, as some people in the field have emphasized. A decrease in homicide within a group is a prerequisite for inventing genocide between groups.
I've seen an awful lot of men and young men put on this tough guys. In many ways, they're putting it on as a survival mechanism. They have to do it to survive in whatever peer culture they happen to be in. But putting on the tough guys comes with a cost, and that is a cost in terms of damage to their psyches and their ability to be decent human beings. So it's in everyone's interest to examine masculinity, to pull back the curtain on the tough guy posing and see what's really going on underneath.
So, for example, if you were to look at what is now a very common phenomenon in warfare, particularly in civil conflicts around the world, which is the systemic use of rape, principally against women. But the reason that women are raped is not specifically to punish those women. It's often to undermine the social fabric, and particularly to undermine the notions of honour and masculinity held by the men in those societies. What would be the point of raping women if it didn't bother the men? Right? So somehow we've got to kind of get beyond simply seeing women as victims, and it is extremely important that we do. I mean, you know, the first position that we've gone through is saying, no, wait a minute, rape is actually an act of war, and it's a very effective one. But then looking at how the social fabric is held together, not just by women and notions of femininity, but men and notions of masculinity.
To be a real man, to be tough, strong, independent, respected, means fitting into this narrow box that defines manhood. The terms that are the opposite of that, wuss, wimp, fag, sissy, are insults that are used to keep boys boxed in. So if you're a boy, it's pretty clear there's a lot of pressure on you to conform, to put up the act, to be just one of the guys. One of the most important places they learn it is the powerful and pervasive media system, which provides a steady stream of images that define manhood as connected with dominance, power, and control. Some of the most serious problems in contemporary American society, especially those connected with violence, can be looked at as essentially problems in contemporary American masculinity.
Disney movies glorify one particular body type above all others: chiseled abs, a barrel chest, and massive arms. Men with any other body type in Disney movies are generally outcasts or weak and subservient.
What the media do is help to construct violent masculinity as a cultural norm. In other words, violence isn't so much a deviation as it is an accepted part of masculinity. We have to start examining this system and offering alternatives, because one of the major consequences of all of this is that there's been a growing connection made in our society between being a man and being violent. We also have to work to change the institutions that create our present choices. For example, we need to break the monopoly of the media system that we've been looking at, where mostly rich white men dictate to the whole society the kinds of images and stories of manhood that surround us.
In Mulan, when Mulan joins the army by attempting to pass as a man, she is taught very quickly that masculinity is defined primarily by strength and physical prowess.
We must be swift as the coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon.
And testosterone, we all have it, but some of us have rather more than others. Testosterone is, of course, the gene that's made switched on the Y chromosome and makes males male.
Early hormonal exposure, perinatal, hormones both before and after birth, around that time, what do they have to do with adult behavior in these realms? They were less interested in playing with dolls than normal girls because they expressed less interest in marriage, because they expressed more interest in having a career someday. So these were obviously over-the-top, rabid, psychopathic, androgenized females because they weren't normal. They weren't interested in dolls or marriage and were interested in a career. This was in every textbook starting in the late 60s and was still there in textbooks by the mid-80s or so, endocrinology textbooks, and somewhere in the early 70s or so, probably some male endocrinologists kind of discovered that, wanting a career if you're female does not count as aggression. Actually, they came up with an even better term, assertive dominance. How's that for a term that just summarizes an entire worldview of gender differences?
Talk about a sequence of experiments I've done over the last, 5 or 6 years on looking at sex differences in aggression using the context of an experimental crisis simulation game. Those men who fight and lose are the ones who have the highest initial testosterone. So they're going in there, they're fighting, and they're losing. So they're basically taking risks that are not calculated risks. They're certainly more likely to engage in unprovoked attack, meaning an attack that takes place before they themselves are attacked. Narcissism is the only personality effect that really affects the likelihood of unprovoked attack. This is true whether or not you're male or female. So if you're a narcissistic female, you're much more likely to attack, just like if you're a narcissistic male, you're more likely to attack.
Women's voice is not heard, and women's contribution in peace and reconciliation are not taken into account.
All of this is going to take a lot of work, and it's not going to happen with just individual boys and men being more reflective about their choices. It's going to happen both on a personal and on an institutional level. Everyone has a role to play here, and not just men. While girls and women are not responsible for men's violence, they too have an important role to play, because the tough guys is attractive to men in part because they see many girls and women validating it. Girls and women have to show that they're looking for more in men than bad boy posturing, and in particular, that they value men who reject the tough guys.
You can change part of it, the environment, you can't change the other part, the genes. And I always find it very odd that the public are so interested in the bit you can't change, the genes, and are so uninterested in the bit that you can.
We can't build peace by leaving half the people out. All over the world, the richest and talented women are working to build peace now.
Women have the right to be involved in peace negotiations.
Women have the right to be involved to shape the future of their country.
To build stable societies, we need women.